Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. Get comfortable, sit back and relax. Stay sinful. Story number 1. This happened a few years ago when I was 7 or 8. My family went to the movies very late in the day. We were watching Star Wars or Jurassic World. Anyway, we went home with our leftover candy and soda, talking about our favorite characters and scenes. It was dark outside when we got home. We got inside and our big giant schnauzer dog was all riled up. This was really strange because she's usually a big teddy bear and doesn't get mean. We walk into the kitchen and the window looks like it was forced open. Cups on the counter were knocked over. What we think happened was someone broke into our house and the giant guard dog scared him away. At the time, I didn't realize how scary that was. I was just trying to calm down my dog. I thought about it a couple days ago and I get chills thinking about what could have happened. My parents changed the locks on the windows, and we rewarded our dog for her valiant duties. Story number 2. Around 2012, I lived with my parents for a year, in my early 20s. In the summer, they would go away to their summer home on the weekends. And not being a fan of leaving the city that frequently, on those weekends I would often have the house to myself. Having lived in apartments for a few years, and being someone who reads true crime, moving back to a multi-story house freaked me out. If someone broke into the basement window, for example, and I was in my bedroom, I knew I would never hear them come in. If someone broke in while I was out and waited for me, there were plenty of places for them to hide. So something I'd do out of habit when I'd come home to that empty house was to yell, while still in the front door, "Get out of my fucking house. I'm calling the police." I still do that sometimes if I'm visiting and find myself home alone. I figure that if someone's in the house, I'll at minimum hear them moving around when I shout. If there was no one in the house, then there would be no one to hear my crazy yelling. Honestly, I really knew that the odds of someone being in the house were extremely low, and the main purpose of yelling was for my own peace of mind, so that I could sleep that night feeling confident that no one else was in the house. Another thing I do when home alone, day or night, I'd compulsively check the lock on the interior of the front door. I knew what it looked like, locked or unlocked, because I grew up in that house. Anytime I was passing from my bedroom on the second floor to the kitchen or living room on the first, I'd pass by that front door, and I'd give it a glance to check its position out of habit, and it was always locked. One of these weekend nights when my parents were out of town, I was lying in bed on my computer on the second floor when I heard a sound on the first floor. It sounded like someone was moving around. I distinctly remember thinking it sounded like it was coming from the front hall. I decided to do my own little routine yelling. Get the fuck out of my house, like I said earlier. I called the police. I didn't hear anything else. I didn't often get freaked out by sounds coming from inside the house, but it had happened before, so I chalked it up to my own paranoia. I forgot about it completely. An hour or so later, I went downstairs, probably to get a snack or something in the kitchen. Like I always did when home alone, every single time I walked by that front door, I glanced at the lock on the door. This time I froze. It was unlocked. I know I had checked that door at least a few times earlier in the night while puttering around the house. I know it had been locked. The thing that makes it extra hard for me to dismiss the lock as simply an oversight on my part, something I somehow missed multiple times, is the sound that I heard coming from that exact part of the house, the sound that stopped when I yelled. I put the chain lock on and slept with my chair under my doorknob that night. Now, the thing that's extra weird to me is I figure whoever went into my house that night had to have a key to just let themselves into the front door. I know my mom gives out keys to a lot of people. Friends, people who worked in the house. Honestly, anyone who needed to would get a key, and I highly doubt my mom would ask for it back. She's not very careful about these things. Also, many of the people who have my parents' keys would have also known that my parents would be away that weekend. Or it's possible they knew I'd be home alone, and I took them off guard with my yelling. I've got no idea. I have no idea why the hell they were in my house that night, because they knew they weren't expected or invited, whoever it was. Anyway, I know this isn't a super exciting story, but it happened and I felt like writing it somewhere. Story number 3. In 2007, I was 17 at the time this happened. I was home alone the night with my mother. It was a boring evening and I was watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I have a habit of looking out the window just to see what's going on, and look what's going on outside. However, that night when I looked out the window, I noticed this man was standing across the street. Looking at him, I was confused to why he was just standing there staring at my house. He was dressed in all black and not moving, just staring. I yelled out to my mother, "Hey, there's someone outside looking at the house." She went and looked towards the window and was just as confused as I was. My mom closed the blinds and shut the lights off so the man from outside would not be able to see in. We checked and peeked through the blinds, and he was still there but had moved closer. She picked up the phone and called the cops. We explained what was going on. They said they would come check it out, and if he was still there, they were going to send someone in to keep the lights off and the doors locked. We looked out the window again slowly. We noticed the man in black was gone. We let out a sigh of relief. We called the police back and they said for the next days to keep a lookout in case he was to come back, and that they would send a police car to check the area out. That was one of my creepiest experiences I've ever had. Story number 4. One night around 8 years ago, my friends and I watched Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, and we're talking about how it would be cool to enroll in a martial arts or self-defense class. Little did we know that we might need it if things went a violent turn that same night. One of my said friends was my roommate. Our room, which was literally just a bedroom with 2 bunk beds, was at the rooftop 5th floor of a dorm building. There were only 2 rooms on this floor, including ours, and the other half is an open area with a table, chairs, and a washing area. Our 2 other roommates were not yet there when we got home, and even when we were getting ready to sleep, so we figured they might be staying overnight somewhere else. I'm not sure how much time has passed, but I woke up to the sound of our door slowly opening. My bed was on the top bunk on the opposite side, while my roommate's bed was on the top bunk adjacent to the door. I figured it was just one of our roommates. I didn't want to engage in small talk, so I just closed my eyes again. However, I remember opening my eyes ever so slightly, because I was confused when I didn't hear any sound that would indicate our roommate entering the room. I saw that our roommate was still standing outside our door, which was left ajar. From my position, I couldn't see the upper half of her body because the other bunk was blocking the view. A person walked to the open area outside our room, right next to the table just beside our windows. I still wasn't alarmed at this point, because we would sometimes hang out there before going into our rooms. I closed my eyes and tried to go back to sleep. My alarm bells finally went off when I could feel the light, which I guessed was from a phone's flashlight, shining on my face. My instinct told me to keep my eyes closed, so I just shut my eyes and somehow I fell asleep again. I thought that it was just a bizarre dream, so you could imagine my horror and confusion when I saw the door was left wide open. when I woke up and the other 2 roommates didn't seem to be back during the night. My roommate was a deep sleeper and slept throughout the night. I recounted the strange events of the evening. We checked if there was anything missing with our things. We both had our phones under our pillows, but her wallet was missing. Later that day, we found the wallet laid down on the hallway of the 4th floor. Her cash was gone, and her wallet photos were taken from the pocket and placed beside the wallet. This is one of the creepiest things that has happened to me. I don't want to imagine what the person was planning to do if I decided to open my eyes that night. Story number 5. I live in a pretty good community where things are relatively peaceful. Breaking and entering is a blue moon around here. However, it still finds a way to happen, and it scared the living hell out of me. This happened late at night, around 1 or 2 a.m., and everyone in my house was zonked out, including myself. The whole residence is dead silent, till the crack of shattering glass rings through the house, instantly waking me up. Now I'm no fighter. I'm a scrawny 16-year-old, and I know damn well whoever got through that window could easily overpower me. But even so, I still grasp the knife under my pillow. As I'm doing this and trying to stay calm and remember where I put my phone, I hear 2 sets of really heavy footprints land out in the living room and started walking around. My heart skips a beat knowing there's not 1, but 2 people that have just broken into my house, and I realize I left my phone on the desk in my room. Now don't get me wrong, I love this house with all of my heart, but the floors creak if you so much as drop a toothpick on it, so the cops are out of the question. I hear my door creak open and I hear a deep, gruff voice that I've never heard in my life say, "If anyone wakes up, take them out by any means." My heart stops. I do absolutely everything I can to keep my breathing under control, and I hold my knife as if it's the only thing I've ever cared about. I hear my TV being hoisted out of my room, and I was hoping this meant they would leave. After taking most of the electronics in the home, they left and I called the cops. I just cried for the rest of the night knowing how utterly close I was to death. Story number 6. A bit of background info. I currently live with my parents, and our home is 2 stories. There is an in-law apartment on the 1st floor, along with some other things: garage bay, furnace room, laundry room. I live in the in-law apartment. My dad has been working with a contractor, some of his employees, to replace the wall-mounted air conditioners. There have been a lot of people in and out of the house. The day this happened, my mom and I went out to do some grocery shopping. My dad stayed home to direct the contractors. We got back and discovered they were gone. My dad had gone to bed, so my mom and I made some dinner and hung out upstairs for a little while. I mentioned offhandedly to my mom that our cars were still outside, and I talked about a woman whose car and house had been broken into down the road. This creeped her out, and she sent me downstairs to check that the front door was locked. It wasn't. In fact, it was just a little bit ajar. I closed it and locked the deadbolt, then went back upstairs. We stayed upstairs and watched TV for a few more minutes, till I heard a loud thump downstairs in the in-law apartment. I assumed that this was my cat, getting antsy because I wasn't feeding her. I told my mom that I was going to go downstairs to feed her, and then come up to finish the show. As I walked down the stairs, I heard another louder thump, which I thought was my cat getting excited it was food time. I opened the door and she was nowhere to be found. Really unusual for her, so I was confused. I walked into the kitchen to look for her and noticed something that made my heart sink. The furnace door was closed. I never close the furnace door. Neither do my parents, because we want the cat to be able to get inside to catch mice. I recognized then that the thump that I had heard could have been the heavy furnace door closing. I was completely frozen, convinced that there was someone right behind that door hiding from me. Now, I'd seen a lot of scary movies lately. It could have been my paranoia, but this felt awful and just not right. I knew that I didn't want to give this potential person any reason to open the door. I put on my best acting skills, pretended that I didn't notice anything amiss. I did some baby talk to my cat and scooped out some food for her. I was super creeped out whenever I had to let the door out of my sight. I was basically keeping it in my vision at all times to see movement. After feeding the cat, I went back upstairs. I grabbed my mom and explained what had happened. She was skeptical again because of the scary movies. She thought maybe one of the contractors had closed the door. Seeing how off-put I was, she went to go wake up my dad. My dad grabbed his gun and went downstairs. He screamed at us to call the cops and get somewhere safe. We hid in the bedroom and we called the cops, who showed up and searched the entire house, not finding a soul. My dad explained to me after they'd gone through the house why he said to call the cops. He saw that the furnace door and the back door to the outside were both open. Thank you guys for watching. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for future content. Email your true scary stories to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com to have your story featured on an upcoming video. I'll leave my email in the description box below as well. Till we meet again, stay sinful.